Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Employee to Boss podcast. I am your host, Haley Hayhurst, the founder of Espresso Podcast Production, a full-service podcast agency specializing in editing, marketing, and strategy. And today I have a guest. Her name is Leslie Danford, and she is the founder and CEO of Vitaminis. If you're watching on YouTube, which if you're not, you can always find the link in the show notes, but I'm holding up a bottle of Vitaminis that she sent me before our interview for me to try it, and I really enjoy this product. It's easy to drink, it tastes really good, and it has a lot of vitamins in it that we talk all about in this episode. So a little bit more about Leslie. She has always been passionate about nutrition, but she is not a foodie. So in 2020, she combined her personal interests with her formal business training to launch Vitaminis. Previously, she worked in beverage and consumer products at large corporations, and she earned her MBA from Harvard University and her BA from the University of Chicago. So in this episode, we talk all about how she started selling her products, came up with the concept, and really her advice for not only networking to be able to get her product into stores, but also how she started sharing her idea and doing market research, and how her first clients really were the ones that helps her get to the product that she is now. We talk all about product rollout and how rejection is just a part of business, but the most important part is how you deal with that rejection. The topic of rejection is really one that I think is really important for more business owners to think about and just know that it is a part of business. Not everyone's going to want to work with you, and that's a good thing, and it can also be a bad thing, of course. But if you take rejection and do what Leslie did with it, which is make her product better or just stay true to herself and keep going, you will get farther in the long run. I have some other episodes touching on this topic, so if you look back, I have one with Ronit Plank, and I also have one with Kelsey Foremost. If you look on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and just look up their names, you'll be able to find those interviews, and I really would recommend you listening to them. And this one, if you are having to navigate rejection or you're really being hard on yourself, because I am telling you, it is just a part of business. So let's get right into this episode with Leslie, and if you're interested in trying Vitaminis, all the links are in the show notes, and you can definitely connect with her there as well. All right, enjoy the episode. Podcasting can be game-changing for business growth if you know the right moves to make. That's why I hosted a masterclass called How to Leverage a Podcast for Business Expansion, the 3 moves that you need to know. There are 3 moves that you need to know to have your podcast grow your business. And in this masterclass, we're diving right in. This masterclass is perfect for anyone with a podcast that wants to take it to the next level, or business owners who want to start a podcast that will help them convert listeners to clients. You can access this masterclass immediately by going to espressopodcastproduction.com/masterclass. And I cannot wait for you to learn the 3 moves that you need to know to make your podcast grow your business. Hey, Leslie, thank you so much for joining me on the Employee to Boss podcast. I am so excited to talk to you today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
If you wanted to start off by telling us about yourself and your business and how you got there, I would love to hear that story.
Yes, so I had sort of a traditional corporate background. I worked in management consulting, then I worked for a big corporate CPG consumer products company, and I had my MBA. And all that time in my personal life, I was very passionate about, I've always still am, nutrition, holistic wellness. Like I really do believe that if you take care of your body and you give it the nutrients that it needs, you can avoid a lot of problems. And not only avoid problems, but actually like have a more joyful, full life. So that was kind of my background. You know, I had my business side of things, my personal nutrition passion. And during the pandemic, the company that I was working for at that time shut down. So I was basically at home. My kids, 3 kids at the time, their school had been shut down. So I was kind of on like meal and snack prep and thinking about nutrition. And it's like one of those things where you get out of your routine and you start to see things differently. But it really reminded me about all the things that I don't love about the supplement industry. It's hard to get all your nutritional needs met from natural foods. So you kind of know you need more, but then they make me nauseous. They have weird ingredients, and gummy vitamins are full of sugar. And I was like, where is that food, like whole food based solution that has lots of nutrients in it, but is still a food or a natural thing? It doesn't feel like another pill or whatever. And I didn't see anything like that out there. And so maybe because I had worked in beverages, it kind of like came together. I know liquid is the best format for absorbing nutrients. So it all kind of came together with immune support. And because it was during the pandemic, this is kind of like what everyone was thinking about. So this product is orange pineapple juice. So it's like juice, tastes good, with as much vitamin C as 3 oranges, as much zinc as 4 avocados, and as much magnesium as 5 cups of spinach in this little shot. Shelf stable. And then a little while later, I launched our second product, which is gut health, berry banana juice with as much fiber as a cup of broccoli and as much probiotics as 2 cups of yogurt for, regularity and that kind of thing. So yeah, that was like, gosh, it's already 2024. The pandemic's long
Yeah.
gone.
Wow, I love that. And on this podcast, I always bring my coffee along, but today I have my Vitaminis. So I actually love these. They taste really good. My boyfriend put his in a smoothie the
Yeah,
other day before he went to work and loved it. So it is very functional, and I like the size of it because normally with juices, I never finish them, but this is very easy to drink. And so if you're watching on video, you'll see me holding it up. But if you're watching or just listening, you can always go on our Instagrams and find what we're talking about. But I love that this all started during the pandemic. That's also when my business started. And a lot of businesses started then too. But especially in the wellness space, this is something that was very much needed. And a lot of different people were looking for immune support. It was top of
yes,
mind for everyone. So great timing on
yes.
that. And I know you launched it when you were actually 8 months
Oh,
pregnant,
yes.
which is wild to me. I don't have kids, but sometimes even have trouble balancing my own schedule. So I can't imagine.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
what
it
did
was
that,
my fourth child, so it's once you've done it a few times, you kind of know what to do.
yeah.
I'm not sure I could have pulled it off the first time around, but it's funny because I had the idea and I was kind of like tinkering with the idea when I found out I was pregnant. So I sort of just set a timeline for myself. I was like, I want to get this product out the door by the time I have this baby. I have like 9 months or whatever. And that will allow me to have a little bit more flexibility and have it kind of like, because honestly, being pregnant is way easier than having a newborn. You know what I mean? So it's like, let's work hard now before this baby comes out. But yeah, that was a little bit crazy. But honestly, and I'm sure you have this too. When you own your own business, on the one hand, the work never ends. You could work 24/7, but on the other hand, you can control your schedule and your time and that kind of thing, which is it's nice, right? It's like easy to do.
Yeah, definitely. And it all comes down to that balance. So I'd love to hear more about your journey from employee to boss. I know you gave us a little bit of an overview, but once you did decide to go all into entrepreneurship, what were some steps that you took? I know that you had to partner with a market a lot of your product to get it on the shelf. So I'd love to hear more about that journey.
Sure. And I think it's easy to look from the outside and think like, oh, one day I just like took a leap and I just did it. It's not really how it was. So I just want to make sure I'm straightforward about that because I think there's a lot of people who maybe have an idea or something and it's like inconceivable to just jump and do it all at once. And that is not what I did. So I have always kind of been interested in entrepreneurship. I actually met my husband in an entrepreneurial club in college. And
Oh, that's so cute.
yeah, he went on to become an entrepreneur right away. And I didn't, but it was always in the back of my head that I thought it would be fun to do someday. And then even when I had the idea for Vitaminis, bear in mind I was like removed from my corporate job by the pandemic. So it's not like I like left my cushy corporate job to do this. It's almost like circumstances kind of put you in a position where you're like, okay, well, I've always thought about doing this and now I'm in this position, you know, it kind of comes together. But I will say it started with just tinkering, and that is a lot easier to approach. So I didn't sit down and say, like, okay, I'm going to start a whole company. I'm going to do this for several years. I'm going to not go back to work ever. So I started with actually speaking to friends and family about the area. So I wrote up an interview guide, and it was like, what are some challenges you face with your nutrition? What do you like about the products out there? What are some things that you wish was in existence that you don't see? And then I actually sat down with friends and family and went through the formal interview guide. So even if it was like my best friend that we chat all the time, I'll say, okay, I'm going to do an interview. And I took notes and everything. And I probably did 50 of those. So that is a really, I think, an easy way to dip your toe in because it costs nothing. I mean, it takes time, but it cost nothing. And I was much smarter about how I was thinking about things coming out of that. It's kind of like pressure testing and refining the idea. And then even after that, when I actually started to investigate, recipes and production, it was a little bit at a time. It was like, okay, I'm going to invest a little bit with a food scientist to help me come up with a recipe. And if it doesn't work out, it's not enough money that's going to like totally break everything, but it's just a little bit. And then once we had that recipe, it's like, okay, I'm going to find a co-packer. And this is easier said than done, but I'm going to find a co-packer who can make a small batch. And it's small enough that if nobody likes it and I just change my mind, that's fine. So it's always kind of like hedging a little bit. But I will say, I went back to work for 6 months during this time, and the business did continue on, but I realized at some point I did have to kind of throw all in. Like, it's one thing to hedge and always kind of say, like, well, just do this, a little of that, or whatever. But at some point, if you don't fully commit yourself, you're not going to be able to make it into as big of a thing as you want. And I'm still on that journey, right? But I knew once I got to a certain point, you kind of know you got to make the leap or not.
Yeah, definitely. And I kind of do like that you slowly took those steps towards it. And then after so many small steps, you were like, okay, I'm all in on this.
Yes.
So I am a service provider, so I don't sell products. And selling products is a whole different ball game. Did you sell products in your past life, in your corporate
Yes,
life?
sort of. I mean, I worked in consumer products. I actually worked in the alcohol industry. So it's beverages,
Okay.
but it's like a completely different
Yeah.
thing. So I did have some context from that, and I do use some of that knowledge. But I will say that like starting something from scratch is completely different. Like when you're in corporate, you're in
Hmm.
your little role and you've got all these other people doing their things. Whereas when you set out to do your own business, especially if you're a solo founder, it's like you have to figure out everything. And I'd never done like
Yeah.
90% of that. So I think it might be easy to look at it and say like, oh, well, she worked in beverages, so therefore it was obvious. But that is not how it was.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. So I would say I relied a lot on networking with other people and other entrepreneurs and joining like consumer product groups. And it's funny because I think back, I remember in the very beginning feeling nervous about sharing my idea, which now I think about that is so silly. Like, it's not like if I tell someone I have this idea, they're going to go do all this work. I mean, it's like not going to happen. So I think there might be a tendency in some people to just kind of like keep their thing to themselves. And that just doesn't work because the only way to figure this stuff out that you've never done, you can research and stuff, but the fastest way to get the best answers is to ask somebody who's done it before and like share knowledge back with them of what you've done. So that was huge in the beginning.
Yeah, I love how you were tying all these other people into your business. Even though you started this solo, you were asking friends and family, you were asking for advice from other people who have done it. And that's a huge part of entrepreneurship that I think a lot of people are hesitant about, like you just mentioned. So, I know you asked those questions to your friends and family, and I absolutely love that. When you went to go selling it, once the product was there, were they kind of your testers, or what did that first round of releasing the product look
Yes.
like?
And this is interesting because this was hard. It's what I've realized about entrepreneurship. I thought it was hard because it was a lot of work, and it is a lot of work. But that's not what the hard part. The hard part is like the mental part of it. So I
Hmm.
remember when I made the product, I was terrified to put it out in the world because it's like, what if people don't like it? What if it makes someone sick? What if somebody like sees it and thinks it's a dumb idea? Like, and like looking back, it's just funny how you get into your own head. So it was terrifying. It was like, you like throw it out there and you're like, ah. And I did end up changing the product quite a bit. Like I got some feedback on the taste. So I tweaked the formula after that first batch. I tweaked the packaging. So it's always good to remember that you don't, putting something out doesn't mean it's end all be all. You can always adjust from there. I did start with that friends and family group. I think I offered free samples to them. That's another good thing to mention is like I made no money in the beginning on this product. It was like a small batch, which is expensive to produce. I gave a lot of it away, but I viewed it as an investment in learning and kind of like getting that foothold. So I did do a lot of samplings with that group, but what I will say is not everyone who is your friend or your family is going to like what you're doing, and it's so funny because that's obvious, but there is a part of you that still expects everyone to be like, oh, this is great, and this is gonna be a huge business, and like this is a good idea, when in reality not everyone's your target market. People have their own perceptions about risk taking or whatever. So like, somebody might taste it and be like, yeah, I would not leave my corporate job. You should not do that. And you have to kind of like filter all of that in and manage your expectations there. So it
Yeah.
was interesting, and I got, like I said, I got a lot of great feedback. There are some people that joined subscription at that time and are still on subscription like 2 years later, but there are a lot of
Yeah.
people that told me, we don't like this, and like, we don't like the packaging, this is not something we would use, and I had to kind of like accept that.
In business, they always say if you try to help everyone or if everyone is your target audience, then you're really not going to reach anyone. And I think that the people who are going to love your product are, they like you, they like the mission, but they also like what the drink gives them, like the results. So even though you weren't making money, you were making all these people healthy
Yes.
and keeping them maybe more confident. I mean, during the pandemic, like we were saying, everyone was so health conscious. And I think having some sort of vitamin or some sort of vitamin drink can really help them mentally
Totally.
and physically.
No, you're so
I'm sure you
right.
saw that a
That's
lot.
why I made this product, because it's stressful to think about like, am I going to get sick? Does my body have its nutrients? Like, I didn't eat any
Hmm.
vegetables today. Like, how am I, and that was my vision, is to just have something that was so easy and tasty that you could just, in a pinch or every day or whatever, just feel like less stress about it. Totally.
Yeah, totally. And when you were getting all of this feedback, and I think it is hard because, like I said, I've never sold a product, but I feel like if I was handing someone something and they were like, I'm not a fan, that would not feel great to me. And I mean, in my business, I'm a podcast producer. Of course, people are like, oh, I can edit my own podcast. Like, like,
Yeah.
do you have any clients? Blah, blah, blah. And so I think it's two different sides of a sword, just like it's a lot. And so how did you mentally get past that? Like, what mindset tips do you have for other people selling products?
Oh wow, that's a tough question, because you still get that. I mean, like now, 2 years in, I'm pitching investors, and some of them are like, "We don't think your business is actually going to go anywhere," and you're like, so it's never ending. I
Hmm.
have a few thoughts on this. I think one is to just kind of practice basic like self care. Really, like get enough sleep, eat well, make time for your hobbies and exercise, because it just generally helps you in general to roll with it. You know what I mean? I'm a type of person that tends to push myself too hard and work. And it's like, I could work 24/7 and never be done. So you have to kind of take care of yourself, because then you can take things in stride a little bit more. I think some of it is just taking a step back and like, you get that feedback. And I've done a lot of samplings now. I've probably done 100 samplings or more. I stopped counting. But same thing, people taste it and some of them are like, ew, and it's like, you just have to kind of pause and be like, okay, and then think about it, and don't, just don't make it into a huge thing. You can kind of think about what it means. At the same time, if you're hearing the same feedback over and over, it is something you should listen to. So like I said,
Hmm.
my first product, I did update the formula because I heard a few times from multiple people that it was a little bit like bitter. There was like a bitter flavor. So we addressed that and changed it. But at the same time, if I tried to change the product every time I got a piece of feedback, it would be impossible. So it's like a balance of kind of like, okay, listening, take it in, don't have a big reaction, but just kind of like noodle on it, and at the same time, don't dismiss it.
Yeah. This is a random story that I just remembered. I used to work in restaurants back in the day when I was like 21, and I worked at a bar and this lady had a green juice on the table. And she was like, "Oh, have you ever had this?" Because I was asking her what she wanted to drink. She was like, "Oh, I'm just going to drink this green juice." And I was like, I can never really get into those. Like, they always are just so kale and whatever. She was like, "Well, you probably drink tequila, right? Like, that's worse." She's like, "This is good for you. It might not taste the best, but it's good for you. It gives you like results." And I was like, you know what? She has a point there. She has a point. And it was just so funny, that connection of just like, I felt very humbled in that moment,
You're like,
definitely.
true.
I was like, you know what? I take it back. I'm going to go get a green juice for sure. But okay, so thank you for being so transparent with all of the like the hard part of entrepreneurship. I want to talk about the more positive parts too, because there's so many positive parts. And what are some of the highlights of your past 2 years of selling a product? Like some wins that you've had, some great results that you've given your customers.
Yes, a lot of things come to mind. I think, like, from a practical side of things, it gives me so much value to be able to manage my time and my energy the way I choose. At different times in my life, that maybe wasn't as important, but right now I have 4 children. I'm trying to run this business. Like, it's really, really valuable to me to be able to fit things in where I want to. So that's just like a benefit, like just like a personal benefit. One other benefit though is like to be able to step back and look at what you've accomplished and to just know that you did it is awesome. Because every single day there's something, like there's some barrier, there's some setback, there's some rejection or some person that tells you like this is never going to work. And it's easy to kind of get caught up in that every day, kind of churn and feel like, because a lot of starting a business when you're, especially solo entrepreneurs, a lot of just like nitty gritty, like lots of nitty gritty
Yeah.
work. So it's easy to say like, oh, I just slaving away on the nitty gritty and nothing ever comes of it. But to be able to step back and think and look at the progress over like a 6 months or a year is so rewarding because it's like, oh, I did that. Like one example that comes to mind is getting into retail. I applied to this particular retailer at the headquarters level. They rejected me. They're like, no, sorry, you've never been in retail. Come back when you've got actual data. And so I kind of networked to see if I knew someone who knew someone there. And I got in touch with the senior guy there. And I was like, hey, and he was like, great product, but I can't really help you. Like if they already said no, the answer is no. So I was like, oh. So then I started going to the local store of that retailer near me and introduced myself to the manager. And I probably went there like 6 or 7 times, just popping in. Oh, I'm shopping. Hey, remember me? I'm Vitaminis. Like, remember this or whatever. And finally, after like 6 or 7 times, he was like, okay, I can give it a try in this store. And then I just was all in, like sampling and supporting it to make sure it like did well, and it did. And so then he recommended it at my request to his colleagues in the area, so the 10 colleagues. So then it was in 10 stores. And by the way, those 10 colleagues didn't reply to the emails or to follow up with them a million times. And then once it was in those 11 stores, supporting it again. So that went on for like 3 or 4 months. And after that time, headquarters had pulled some report and saw Vitaminis was growing on it. And they were like,
Yeah.
wait, that's the woman that we rejected. And so they reached out to me and they were like, we saw that you're doing really well in these 10 stores and we'd like you to go. So that to me is just a story of like not giving up and also like the rejection factor. I mean, I got rejected 15 times if you add it all up in that sequence of events, but it did end up working. So you can like step back and be like, oh, it worked. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, the third thing when you ask me that question of like, what are some like big wins? I love hearing testimonials from people about how the product has helped them. It's amazing because I designed it with a purpose. I leveraged all the knowledge that I could from experts and whatever to like design a product that would do the thing. And I use it and I like it. But to hear a complete stranger, for example, on an Amazon review say like, oh, I have IBS and I take a gut health in the evenings and it like really reduces all my symptoms, or everyone in my house got sick and I bought a case of immune support and I was the one who didn't because I took them. That just makes my day. It's just like, wow, that's great. So those are just a few items.
Totally. I love those. I love those. And I love the perseverance of just like keeping at it, you believe in yourself, you believe in your product, and you know that it will help people. And so that is an incredible story, and I really appreciate you sharing it. And with more people trying your product, of course you get more reviews. They could be good, they could be bad, whatever it is. But I just think having a bigger audience to be able to reach is so helpful, because some people might be biased, especially if you're looking all in one area, or, within a certain group of like friends or whatever it may be. So definitely having a bigger audience is always helpful.
Totally. And it's funny because people say, you need a really targeted audience. Like you were saying, if you talk to everyone, you're not really talking to anyone. And that is also true. So what I have found is you have to get that broad audience and then really narrow in on where it's
Hmm.
resonating. So it's like you don't start, you're not automatically going to know. That was something I didn't expect. And I don't know if this is true for everyone, but I thought I knew who the product was for. But after sending it out in the world and having the experiences, I've really changed and adjusted that, and it's still a work in process. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because again, it might look like, oh well, you just knew it was going to be for this person for this usage occasion and that's it. And it's like, no, you have to kind of like learn and then adjust as you go.
Yeah, and be open to it.
Totally.
Be open to that feedback is that can be a hard part too.
Yeah, it is. That's the other thing I'll say about being an entrepreneur that I did not expect is the personal development is a lot. It's great, right? But like when it's just you are going to live with every decision. So like let's say you're like really good at X, well then X is going to do well. Let's say you're like really not good. Let's say you procrastinate, or well, nothing's going to get done. And so it's like this constant feedback about your product, about yourself, like coming at you, and it's an amazing opportunity, but it can be really, it can get to you sometimes. So I'm all about like
Yeah.
don't quit, take a break. It's like my thing. I read that somewhere. I'm like, I love that. Like you don't have to quit, just take a break.
That's actually really good advice. It makes so much sense. I don't know if I've ever heard it said just like that before, and I
Right? It's like you
really
can just
appreciate
quit for
that.
a
That's
small amount
great.
of time and then come back.
Yeah. Yeah. Just give yourself a break, take a deep breath, and just
Yeah.
relax. No, that's really great advice. So, when you were starting to have more people try the product, there's always changing demands. You started this in the pandemic, which is a great kicking off point for immune health. That's what everyone needed. And then you introduced your gut health. And so I want to hear what's next, but also how you craft different beverages for the different needs that are emerging.
Yeah, it's such an interesting question because yeah, the immune support was so specific to that time period. And this immune support product now is actually taking off with several different audiences. Um, there's a big group of customers in the like menopause, perimenopause women who want the zinc and magnesium for like hormone regulation. Taking this has nothing to do with immune support. And then a lot of like older folks that can't swallow pills. So it's also one of those things too where you kind of discover usages. The third product that I'm working on imminently producing, hopefully really soon, is called Daily Greens. Same idea, like a shot with the vitamins from green vegetables, A, D, E, folate, C, in like a green, like green apple, pear, and veggie juice. And that I designed based on feedback from my early customers saying like, oh, I love this idea of a shot and I love these products, but like, have you ever thought about doing more of a multi, more of like a kind of capturing more of that nutrient base in it? So that's one way, is like just hearing from customers. And then I do just kind of keep an eye out on trends and like what are the different functions that people are talking about online, or if I'm posting on social media, just keeping track of like what's, popular. Like a lot of subjects right now around like stress relief, mental health, like cognitive types of things, sleep, getting better sleep. Protein is always big. And then in certain populations, things like eyesight or bone health. So I have a list, and it's kind of a fluid process, I would say, but it's not something that I have an answer to. It's not like you can like pull one research report and it's like, it's this. It's kind of like all this data that I just kind of like percolate on.
Yeah, market research is so important, especially when creating a new product. So I love that you have all different audiences, like you were just saying. So I want to talk about the marketing for a minute or two. Like, when you were, launching your product and starting to market it, since you do have different audiences, what's your priority in there and what's kind of your approach to marketing?
Yeah, that's been an evolution. And it's still an evolution.
Yeah.
So when I started, I had this vision of what an e-commerce based product would be. And because we started in e-commerce. And it was like, I'm going to advertise on Instagram and I'm going to do all these different things. But a few things. One is during that time period, everyone was doing e-commerce. So Instagram advertising was so expensive. It was just off the table. So I spent a lot of time trying to build up a social media presence and get organic followers. But honestly, it didn't drive much in terms of business. And I don't know if that's specific to this kind of a product where it's like someone's not necessarily going to buy a vitamin drink just because they saw it once on social media. Like you need to see it a lot and you need more familiarity. So that did not really work out. I mean, I spent a lot of time on social media and I do sometimes, I mean, I still post and stuff, but it just does not deliver. It does not deliver. I'm sure there are people like fans of the brand that are on there liking my posts, but it doesn't drive sales and it's not very important. So that was a surprise. One area that I did not expect to lean on that I do now is email. And in my head, I thought email was kind of dead. It's like, email is like from 99 or something, but it's so not true. Like people are still using their email, they're opening their email. And the nice thing about email is you can get someone in and then you can hit them 6 or 7 times and like create content that's educational and different, lots of like recipes, educational content, expert interviews, and like all this great stuff can kind of be delivered to them and they're opting in. So you're not just like invading their feed when they're scrolling social media, they're like opting in to hear from you. And that has been really, really important for us. So on our bottle, we actually have a little QR code to join our email list. So if you buy one bottle in the store and you like it, you can come to our website, drop your email, and then maybe think about a subscription or a 12 pack or a combo pack or whatever. So email has been very important.
I really like that approach. It's definitely more personalized than just promoting on social media, and email does convert really well for a lot of businesses. So
Yeah.
that's really cool. Do you have a certain approach you take to email marketing?
Yes, I do think consistency is important, but there's a lot of opinions out there about how often you should be emailing people. So with that, I just try to go with my gut. So we just do a weekly email because
Hmm.
I've been told to do 2 or 3 times a week, but I think to myself, if I was receiving 2 or 3 emails a week from a company, I don't think I would appreciate it. So that's one thing on frequency. And then I try to put the lens of like, what would people find interesting? Because like if you're getting every week like 20% off, 20% off, it's like stop. So
Yeah.
I spend time, I'll make a note, like if I see a trending topic on social media or other platforms that relates at all to like nutrition, gut health, immune systems, the various like magnesium, like you'll see a lot of things on that. I'll just make a note and then we develop blogs. So we have a blog, so we'll develop blog content or a recipe or anything like that. And then I'll pepper that into the email. So I try to keep the email variety up with content that people would find interesting. And that's really
Yeah.
it. So some of it's like time of year, some of it's just what's trending. And then the other thing I think is great about email is you get a lot of data on the back end. So going back and saying like, okay, what emails performed really well? And then within those emails, where were people clicking? Like what did they really like to see in here? And learning from that.
Totally. Yeah, I really like that approach. Leslie, this has been great. I've loved everything that you had to share. And is there anything else you want to share about business or your product?
Not really, but I would love everyone to come try it. vitaminisbrand.com, drop your email. We have great emails. Did I mention that? It's great. I would love to hear what people think, and it's fun to share the lessons because I don't think of myself as knowing all that much. I'm kind of early in the journey. It's still a small company, but when I think back to like the very first beginning of it, there are things that I can share, which is it's fun to like recap that.
Yeah, I guess I do have one more question for you. Since there are so many parts to your business, all businesses, do you do this all on your own or do you have a team supporting you as well?
I'm the only full-time employee, but I do have contractors. So like part-time in different areas like regulatory or helping me manage my Amazon. So there's like some very specific skills. And then we have some interns too that help me a lot with the marketing and the social media. So I have a crew, but I'm the only full-time person.
I'm sure next time we talk, you'll have a full-time
We'll
support team,
see.
but that's awesome. That's really cool that you can also have interns because I feel like there's a lot to learn from you and a growing business. And that's one thing that I always worked for like established businesses when I was interning, but I think now that I'm an entrepreneur, it would have been so helpful to be working with a business that was growing.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's like you learn more than you even planned for.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, Leslie, I have loved this. I would love it if you could wrap up this episode by sharing 3 action steps for the audience to take this week based on our conversation.
Yes. So based on our conversation, I have a couple ideas. The first one is to carve out some time for yourself. So I think it's easy in the early days of entrepreneurship to just go and think like, oh, I don't need to like work out or spend time with my friends or whatever because I'm too busy. Do those things because it never stops. It's always gonna be like that. So carve out time for yourself. The second one is a little more tactical, but I actually have it back here. I have this list where I plan out by quarter, and it's like 2 or 3 things for the next 4 quarters. So, like in the next 3 months, really simple. Get into this retailer, do this, whatever, launch that, whatever, quarter. I love that for a couple reasons. One is it just really cuts through the clutter because it's like I have a zillion things that I'm doing, but if I really had to boil it down, there's like 2 or 3 things that are really, really important. And the other benefit of it is you can look back on the quarter and say like, oh, yeah, I did do those 3 things. Or like maybe one of them didn't get done, but it helps kind of ensure that you're staying on track with your higher level goals. And then the last one would be just take that risk, like it's easy to like overthink or worry or, you're never going to know the outcome. Like that's unavoidable. So it's really not that bad. Just take that risk. Like what's the worst that could happen? Ask yourself what's the worst that could happen. It'll be fine. And you could end up in an even better place than you are.
Yeah, usually the worst that can happen is you just stay the same.
True.
So it's like
Put it that way.
there's really no loss in just taking the bet on yourself because there's always jobs out there that will hire you. There's always things you could fall back on. And it's not the end of the world if you have to, but it's so much better if you can just trust yourself and take that leap.
Totally. Yes.
How can people connect with you and Vitaminis?
Come to our website, vitaminisbrand.com. Drop your email, drop us a note. We're also on Instagram and TikTok at vitaminisbrand. We're on Amazon. We just launched on Walmart Marketplace. Sometimes you have to search. If you just put Vitaminis, you might not find it because it pops up with a lot of vitamins. But if you put in Vitaminis juice, you should find it. And then if you're in the Midwest, we're at Fresh Time Farmers Market and the Fruitful Yield.
Very cool. I like that you're in all these different places and congrats on launching on Walmart. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for joining me today. I will put all of the links in the show notes and I hope that everyone reaches out to you. And I love Vitaminis. It tastes so good in my opinion. So I hope that everyone can go and order some and try them for themselves.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Employee to Boss podcast. If you made it to the end of this episode, I hope that you implement the actionable steps from this week's experts so you can get started with your business today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the Employee to Boss podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. It helps more than you could ever imagine. Remember, a little progress each day leads to big results. We come out with a new episode every Tuesday. To access our show notes, transcripts, and courses, please check out espressopodcastproduction.com.